Just a quick reminder about Zoom. So if you have anything that you need to relay to me, feel free to use the chat. If you have anything to relay to everyone, like a link or recommendation, feel free to drop that into the chat as well. You can also just raise your hand, and Debbie, who is moderating our event tonight, will go ahead and call on you. We are going to have direct questions of our panelists, and I think Debbie is going to introduce them. But before we get started, we have something a little bit different. We're going to launch a poll just to get a feel for where you folks are in your hosting process, kind of what you're thinking about in terms of direct bookings, so that we can make sure that we're sort of addressing where you are and where you want to be. So give me just a second to launch that. And there's just 3 questions on this first poll. So I'm going to leave that up for just a little bit and let you folks kind of weigh in on that. And I know could probably use a little tweaking in terms of the options, but bear with us as we're just kind of getting rolling on that. Got one more person coming in. And your responses are rolling in. That's great. From what I can tell, it looks like the majority, 2/3 of you are hosting a standalone rental. Another, say 20% have an attached unit that's attached to your home. And then there's a few folks, or maybe just one folk with a shared home rental situation. Then as far as direct booking options, it looks like there are quite a few of you already offering some type of direct booking option. So 2/3 are offering some sort of a direct booking facilitation. Then we have 92% of folks are interested in direct booking opportunities, which is great because that means you're in the right place. And we're so glad you're here. Host2Host co-founder Debbie Herter is again moderating our conversation today. And I am so happy that she'll be able to sort of get your questions answered. If you do have anything super urgent that you want to ask and you don't feel like it's the time to raise your hand, just drop the word question in the chat and go ahead and ask it. And Debbie will make sure that that question gets answered. So without further ado, our esteemed moderator, Debbie, turning it over to you.
Thank you, Charity.
Thanks.
And I'd just like to say, if you haven't met Charity before, she is our executive assistant and one of the founding members of Host2Host. In fact, she and her wife were some of the first people to attend our very first meetup in December of 2014.
Oh my gosh.
So yes. Yeah.
It feels like ages ago. Thank you, Debbie. Thanks so much. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll now.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
So this is the place. I'm very pleased that so many of you are already doing your own direct bookings, but this is the place where you can ask those questions of our panelists who have a variety of different hosting experiences. And we're going to kind of do this organically, conversation wise, because we want this to flow into how it can most help you in your businesses. So we'll start with giving you some examples. David Bowe is David, there he is, a founding member of Host2Host and a past board member. David's style of hosting is home sharing his 2 bedrooms within his primary residence. Anthony Rollo, if you'll put your hand up, is a current board member of Host2Host. He lives in New York and hosts his 6 homes on which are located on the Eastern Seaboard, New York, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, not Florida yet. He also offers consultations to hosts. So he's very open and very generous with his knowledge, and we just really appreciate that. Kim Fitzpatrick, there's Kim, is also a current board member of Host2Host and is a rising star in the industry. Her experience began in home sharing her Portland home and then combining that with the vacation rental model. She owns and manages, as well as co-hosts, properties in Oregon, Montana, Oklahoma, Florida, and counting. She, through her business, launched Host. Kim offers help in whatever owners need, including property setup, co-hosting, marketing, and solution finding. We know that some of you already take direct bookings, and we know that all of you are interested. And so our format will be to get some basic information out there, and then we'll take questions. You can use the chat like Charity said, and you can also raise your hand and we'll get to you. This is going to be really informal and conversational. So I want to kick it off by my first question to Kim, which is basically, what is direct booking and why would we want to engage in it?
Okay, well, leadoff hitter, huh? Direct bookings are bookings that you take directly, that you don't go through another booking platform like a property manager or a like Airbnb or Vrbo or booking.com, that you have your own setup to receive payment and take bookings and the like. And why would we want those? Because sometimes we don't love the way that Airbnb and Vrbo run their sites, or the way they may not always put hosts first. And this gives us the chance to take the lead in our businesses. That's what I'd say.
I'll jump in here real quick to just add something. Thank you, Kim, for that. The key thing to remember is if you're taking a booking through Airbnb or Vrbo, which you should be if you're hosting a short-term rental, and you're there, the customer, the guest is their customer, not yours. That's the differentiating line right there. If you're taking a guest into your home directly, they are your customer, and that's where the relationship really can blossom.
Great addition.
Yeah. David, let's ask you to briefly describe how you take your direct bookings. I think you do it differently as a home sharer, and I think we'd really enjoy hearing that.
So my approach is really the most low tech possible, which is, since I am sharing the space, I talk to the guests, and especially people that I would be interested in maybe having stay longer. And then if it's clear that they're not on vacation, but they're actually working here, I'll say, hey, would you be interested in staying longer? And as it happened over this last winter, two of those people, one in December and one in January, said yes, they'd like to stay. And so they both stayed. In fact, they both just left last week. So I had these long-term stays, and that's all I'm interested in. I'm not interested in short-term stays for me personally, because of the tax situation with Portland and stuff. If it's shorter than 30 days, if it's longer than 30 days, they don't have to pay the short-term rental taxes. And so that makes the administration of it a lot easier. But unlike the others, I do not have any kind of sophisticated setup or whatever to attract people. Mine is just about talking to people and making that personal connection.
Thank you. Anthony.
Hey.
How do you do this with your many properties and owning properties that are at a distance from you?
Yeah, no, thanks, Debbie. So as Debbie mentioned, I'm in New York. That's why it's dark outside, if you can even see the outside here. And the closest home to us is about 2 hours away. The furthest is currently about 12. So we do accept guests from Airbnb. We do accept guests from Vrbo, and we do accept guests directly. And We prefer them to be directly, as I mentioned before, because then the guest is ultimately our customer, not the platforms. And for us, it's a healthy balance. It's a bit of a risk mitigation approach, because if you've been doing this for even a short amount of time, you've likely heard some horror stories of getting delisted or deplatformed from Airbnb or Vrbo. More often Airbnb, I've heard. And if you're reliant on that revenue, and you're just blasted off the map there, it can be a real problem. So all these properties are, we own them, or they're family homes. But in order for them to exist, we need to have revenue come into them. And Kim, who's a co-host, certainly can talk about, in a co-host relationship, if you're not bringing in bookings, you're not bringing anything in. But for us, we do our best to attract guests directly, a handful of ways. And I'd say this is something that can be foundational as you're considering it. And since you're here for this panel, you obviously are. Having your own presence online is something that's important. It could be a website, it could be a sales page, it could be something as simple as a Facebook page or an Instagram page, and each of them you can have all of them as well. But ultimately, what you're going to want to do is attract the guests that you're looking to market toward. So it starts with kind of knowing the persona of who you wish to have stay in your home, and you can name them. You can really identify them as the perfect ideal guest, and by doing that, and the way you write your copy in your listing, the way you write your copy on your sales page or your Instagram or your Facebook page, all of that is going to be indicative of who is going to come and stay in your home and look to stay in your home ultimately. So getting that tight and really understanding that you're likely not catering to everyone. Like David gave a really good example of he wants to have medium-term stays, not short-term stays for his reasons, and he's a stay-at-home host. So to him, like, he wants those people that aren't going to be there just for the weekend. So for us, we prefer to have people that are there, and all of our homes are in vacation markets. So we prefer people to come there for shorter stays. In fact, we don't currently allow for stays over 21 days. One, to avoid potential eviction when you cross the line from being a guest to a tenant, which is, depending on the state, can be tricky, and eviction could be a messy process. And so that, again, that goes back to understanding who your ultimate guest is. And once you get that tightened up, the marketing is kind of the next piece.
Anthony, what are some of your favorite tools to use?
So as I mentioned, you can have a handful of technology kind of at your fingertips, right? So again, you can have them all, you can have even just one. And if you're new to this and you don't have a website, you don't have a sales page, you don't have a Facebook page, you don't have an Instagram handle yet, I would say starting with social is probably a very low barrier of entry, because you've likely visited Instagram or Facebook yourself, probably use it, and you can at least get started there with putting your home out there. And I always recommend kind of really branding your home, so creating a name for it and making it unique. And again, that doesn't mean you have to go out and buy a URL and set up your own website yet. I'd certainly recommend it, but again, baby steps if you want to. So starting on social would be certainly a great way, and relatively low barrier of entry. I would say the next level, which is not much higher, honestly, and you can have a lot of fun with it, and you can actually take bookings, would be using an online platform that's currently completely free called Housey. And what's really helpful about Housey is that you're going to be able to easily import your Airbnb or Vrbo listing. And what I mean by import it, I mean like you put in the website address and it'll pull your pictures in, it'll pull your descriptions in, it'll pull your title in, it'll pull your initial pricing in. It's very sophisticated, it's very well built, and it's something that won't really take a lot of time. Once you kind of get it set up, that will give you effectively a presence online that you can direct people to. So again, when you're marketing to people, you can use this as a tool. I'll give you guys a link here.
And if I can just interject, it's also free.
It's 100% free. And it's, I don't know why I said a picture there, that's weird. But it's super simple. It really is a very straightforward process. And again, that gives you that instantaneous presence. Just, if someone's like, oh, you have a home in the Smokies? Oh yeah, I do. Oh, I'd love to see it. And you're like, oh, well, let me send you some pictures. Like, I'll send you an email. Like, no. You can drop this link to them and they're going to be able to see everything. They're going to see calendar availability, which again, syncs up with the platforms that you may be on, like Airbnb and Vrbo. The pricing, you set that, of course, yourself. And it even allows you to connect a payment processor like Stripe is one, or Square is another one, so that you can literally take credit card, digital payments for people who are booking versus like, checks and things like that.
Let's actually talk money. Is it difficult to set up the Stripe account? And I would like also to hear how David takes his money and how Kim takes her money too. So if we can just kind of circle around that.
So do you want me to go first, Debbie?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So I would say setting up a Stripe account on a level of difficulty being, 0 being the simplest thing in the world and 10 being difficult. I would say it's probably like a 3 or a 4. So it's not overly difficult. You do have to have a bit of information. You have to have a bank account, you kind of have to, you put your name in there and everything. So it's again, you got to think about it. It's setting up a way for you to accept payments via credit card or possibly even bank transfers and such. It wants to make sure you're you and you're not just setting it up to kind of scam people. So it does have a little bit higher than just a very low or 1 or 2 kind of barrier of entry. And then once you set that up, and again, you can set it up in your personal name, you can set it up in an LLC if you have one, whatever you really need to. And then you simply connect that. Again, if you're making a quick website with Housey, which you can do literally within minutes, you'll be able to connect that with a literal cut and paste of like a line of a URL. It's very simple.
If you already have a PayPal or Venmo account, would that suffice?
I'm quite sure that actually they offer that as an option as well.
I saw David's thumb go up. Is that what you do, David?
Exactly. Yeah. Or even just cash. Cash works fine.
So you
I
don't
would say that I also take payment via Zelle and wire transfer. And the nice things about those is with Zelle and wire transfers, you don't have to worry about a chargeback, as can be something that people are frustrated with. When that money is in your bank, it's in your bank and it doesn't get pulled from like the credit card company the way Stripe might do. Although I also do use Stripe.
So for instance, chargebacks is what you're talking about, potential chargebacks.
Yeah.
I will throw out there, we used to offer Zelle as an option. We moved away from it simply because it became a little bit more of a platform for people that were scamming. So we took that out of our options. But a good point that Kim mentioned is that there are fees associated with Stripe. So you'll pay around 3% fee by taking it via credit card. So it is a convenience. So you're paying that fee for that. And for the guest, they're feeling a little more secure, likely by paying with a card. And then chargebacks, that's, we can continue kind of conversations on how to protect yourself from those situations. I'd say the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to want to make sure you have a rental agreement. And contrary to what most people do, I would 100% advocate that you have a rental agreement for any booking you take. Airbnb, Vrbo, your next door neighbor's friend, anyone, have a rental agreement.
So do you ask your guests to sign a rental agreement even when they're using one of the platforms?
Yes, every single guest of ours fills out an entire rental agreement, which includes the responsible guest name. So the responsible guest is the booker, and also the payer. The names of their guests, the age of their guests, the relationship of their guests, a copy of their government issued ID to kind of make sure that they are who they say they are, a signature on an electronic, DocuSign type document. We do that for everyone, and we state that in our listings.
And how do you do that on Airbnb? What's your sequence for getting that signed document?
So as soon as someone books, we ask a couple. We have a couple questions that we ask of them, and this is kind of just part of our vetting process. And we do this for everyone. We ask, what brings them, confirming kind of how many guests they say they're going to take. They're bringing, the relationship of the responsible booker to the guest. We do this in the messaging platform initially, and we also make them put it out in the document as well. Their age ranges, have they visited before, where they're visiting from. So this kind of helps us weed out people who may be coming for nefarious reasons. They want to do a party that's like, oh, it's all adults and we're all 18 or something. Like, don't want that. And normally when we tell them, confirm with them, hey, we were asking this, so we're going to prepare the rental agreement for you. Again, if they're coming in for legitimate purposes and they don't care, it's like, okay, rental agreement, I get it. That's fine. For those who may be worried about that and they're like, oh gosh, I gotta fill a rental agreement out. And again, we are upfront about that in our listings and in our communication. If they cancel, we dodged a bullet. We know it, right? So we try to make sure that's a level of pre-vetting our guests. But to answer your question specifically, Debbie, so at the end of those initial questions, once they provide all of them, we say, okay, well, we're gonna be sending you over a rental document, and be on the lookout for that. So then we will take the information that we need. Our rental document is semi-extensive from having information in it. It's not too cumbersome for the guest though, but it's just cumbersome enough, if that makes sense. We send that to them. We use so Panadoc is one platform. We don't use them. We use a platform called Sign Now, but 6 of one, half dozen the other, effectively. And it's a template that we've already created, and we have information in there that we put in the information that's specific to the booking. So the date, the guest. We have our rules obviously in there. We have the price that they're paying. We have language around chargebacks. We have language around cancellation policies. So again, just re-emphasizing all the stuff that they had seen previously. And then we send it to them either via text message, and Sign Now offers this option, or via email. So Vrbo, we typically send it via email. On Airbnb, we are now sending it through text message. And then we send a message to the guest saying, hey, did you get this? It came to you via text, and it came from this number, so that they know. And they click on it and fill it out, take a picture of their ID, and it comes back, and it automatically sends back to both of us. We quality check it by making sure it matches. Look at their ID, make sure it's not a picture of their cat. Again, they could do that by accident, but we check it. And then we say, we're so happy your reservation is confirmed. Thanks for filling out the document.
Joel.
Anthony, when you send it out to somebody who's reserved with you 3 or 4 times before, they're absolutely rock solid, do you still send out another one with the current information?
Yep, everyone.
Okay.
Any person, any friends of family, anyone. Anyone who's, if they're not staying there with us physically, they're going to be filling out a rental agreement.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Heather wants to know if there's still an issue asking guests for ID through Airbnb. I was wondering that too, if you get any pushback.
Good question. We get very little pushback, I would say, out of our almost 1,000 stays, I'd say at this point, less than 1%. And the reason is because we're upfront about it. We have it in our house rules that we will be, that this is a requirement for booking our stay with us. And it's also, we indicate that it's a requirement by our insurance.
Mhm.
And again, if they're not comfortable with it, I kind of would scratch our heads. You know, if they need to cross out some, you know, cross out your driver's license number, totally fine. But we need to see your face. We need to see your name. We haven't pushed back on like the address, the home address, but it can be helpful. Again, like we've asked them where they're coming from, right? So, hey, we're coming from Missouri, and they send me a Texas license. Oh, hey, so did you guys move from Missouri to Texas? You know, what's the like? Again, it just kind of opens up some different conversations.
Yeah.
And at that point, if they're trying to do something, if they've stolen a credit card or that, you know, they set this up, you can prevent this situation from going off the rails.
David, do you use a contract, a rental agreement?
Yes, I do have a rental for the stays because they're 30 days or more. So I have to have one in place with each of these guests just for my own safety.
Very good. And Kim, I'm assuming that you do too, right?
Yes, I do. I will admit I have been casual about it in the past, but I also understand that it's only a matter of time before you're going to need one. So it's actually something I was working on today. And I wanted to piggyback on what Anthony was saying about the ID. I haven't had issues with address, but I do check age. They must be 25 to book. And it's a surprising amount of people that will still give you their ID and they are not 25. And we have to have a little discussion. And it's interesting how they can turn, well, I'm 24 and a half and I'm a really successful adult and I can't believe it. And you need to run your business like a business and da-da-da. And it's like, oh, thank you. Goodbye. I will take that into consideration. And so, yeah, I've had issues with the ID has helped stave off guests like that.
Kim, do you ask them how old they are in advance before getting to the ID request stage?
It is mentioned 3 times before they book that they need to be 25 or older. And I do, like you, I'm very upfront about asking for their ID. So they're aware.
Kim, is the age of 25 a personal choice, professional choice, insurance choice?
At one property, it is an insurance. It's a requirement of my insurance. And because of that, it seems like good practice and I spread it throughout the others. And I'll be real here, which I know is public. I tell everyone it's an insurance reason why they have to be 25. It just helps so it's not me versus them. And that seems to work well.
I'll piggyback on top of what Kim said. And we have different age ranges, minimum age requirements in our homes as well, based on the size of the home, based on the location, based on regulations in one area, and based on the ultimate persona. So as I said before, you really want to know who you were trying to attract. So our most expensive and most premium property, we have a minimum age of 31. And you know, why 31? Why not 30? You know, it just, we're attracting families. So we want someone who likely has kids with them. I know a lot of people are like, no, we don't want kids, but we actually try. That's how we set the home up to really have 2 or 3 families come stay with us. So not that 24-year-olds can't have children, obviously they can, but it is just something that kind of typically can be a selector of the guests that we're trying to market to.
Yeah, I used to have a camper named Buttercup, and she was just a little glamping site. And for her, my minimum age was actually 18 because it attracts young female solo travelers. So there are exceptions when the property's ideal guest, requires.
Frequently, hosts will say to me, why do I want to take direct bookings? Won't I have to pay the taxes? That's more headache than what I want. And so so how do you do with the taxes? How can you move through that in a fairly smooth fashion, or is there any smooth way to do taxes?
When I need to remit my own taxes, I use, I'm gonna probably pronounce it wrong, aloe vera. I always think of the
Avalara.
plant.
Yeah.
Avalara. Okay, yeah.
Avalara.
I use them, and that makes it really pretty streamlined.
We
Kim,
use
how-
Avalara ourselves
How do-
for our Tennessee properties.
How do they charge?
They charge depending on the filing. So in Tennessee, we file monthly. So we pay monthly for them to take care of the filing. But the cost, so it's $27 if I remember correctly. It's worth it based on knowing you're doing it right and having it kind of done consistently. They send you an email, they send you a message or an email like it's due. I mean, we're going to get one in a week, and it tells you the window of how long you can submit it. Initially, they tell you kind of like what you need to, what you need to calculate it by. I've kind of set up my own step by step so that I go and I look at the step. I say, oh, step 1, go to Airbnb. Step 2, go to Vrbo. Step 3, go to the PMS that we're using, and pull down the information, add that together, type that empty here, and then you hit submit. And I could probably go back and tell you how long it takes me, but normally it'll take me anywhere between 10 and 15 minutes for 3 properties.
And I could
And
just go ahead, Anthony.
I was gonna say I do other ones manually, and they take longer, honestly, and it's kind of annoying, but they're done quarterly. So,
And I would just throw in for myself that I don't deal with that because I only have people that are staying over 30 days, and that's a long-term stay. So that avoids that issue. And that's one of the reasons that's all I deal with.
Yeah. Okay. So then to Kim and Anthony, do you increase your prices to cover the cost of the tax administration?
I would say no, I don't. My prices are more fluctuated based on the year and whatnot, time of year, seasonality.
Okay.
if you're asking, do we charge more for our direct customers than we would on a platform? The answer is no. We charge the least amount for our direct customer because we value that relationship that we can have with them in a one-on-one perspective. I certainly wouldn't say I'm against putting like okay, well, you know what, they're going to be paying on Stripe, I'll put 3% on top of it. Oh, I spent 15 minutes on them, I'm going to put an extra percent, or whatever it is. And that's something I'd probably consider in the future. Like, it's really all variation. So it's like, if your price is $100 on Airbnb, it's probably $85 direct, and $102 on Vrbo or something like that. But I think the benefit, I always believe you're going to want to give the ultimate best deal, and that doesn't mean the best price always. It could be a comparable price to what they might be paying on Airbnb or Vrbo. Value and price aren't always equivalent, right? Like, you may say, hey, guess what, you can get it on Airbnb for $100 a night, and ours is 98. That's like, what's the point? I want to keep it on Airbnb. Like, but if you're coming through us, you're going to get access to the kayaks, and you're going to have early check-in and late checkout, complimentary, that kind of stuff that, again, adds value to their stay, but is something that you don't do for your Airbnb guests.
That's a great idea, Anthony. I'm sold. I will direct book with you. Free kayaks, yes.
Yeah, no, I mean, one of our properties that's on a lake, you know, we have, it's funny because in our guide, it's like a secret link. But when we market to our guests, so we send them emails, previous guests, people that have stayed with previous booking guests. And we talk about when you book your stay with us directly, one, you're always going to get the best price. And two, you're also going to get extra bonuses. Like now we've got 2 adult kayaks and 2 kid kayaks, and, you know, life vests and everything that only you get access to this way.
Genius marketing. I like it.
I mean, again, it's an increased value for someone who's, you have to think about it this way. The person who's booking with you directly is taking a risk on their side, because it's almost no risk when they do it on Airbnb, you know, less risk, right? In Vrbo or whatnot, because these are, you know, billion-dollar companies. You know, they spend their money on marketing. You know, if something goes wrong, you can complain about it and very likely get compensated and things taken care of. So they're putting themselves out there by coming to you. And by doing that, if you're, you know, again, showing you're professional with the things that we talked about before, having a social presence or a website or a landing page or all of the above, that makes them feel more comfortable. And then ultimately when they stay with you that time, then they'll feel ultimately comfortable. Your communication with them, all of that is going to give them additional trust. And something that has recently been brought up by other people, and I wholeheartedly agree with it. There's a validation factor that you can offer to people who are booking direct with you that may seem a little counterintuitive, but you're marketing to someone, and, you know, when I say market to someone, what does that mean? You can send an email to them, you can post in Facebook groups, you know, you could have physical pieces of paper, or, you know, bookmarks, postcards. You could have a sign in front of your house. Angela, shout out to you for that great thing before. But when you're doing that, and if someone's going to view your property in a direct perspective, you can also show them your Airbnb and Vrbo listing, because then it's again, it's validating, like you're legit. Like this is not, you're not messing around. You're like, hey, you want to book on Airbnb? No problem. They go in there and be like, oh, the example I had before, it's $100. Oh, but it's $85 a day. But it's the same thing on the same person. Everything matches up, and having that social that online travel agency validation can be really beneficial.
I agree. When I post advertisements, I use both links, the Airbnb or Vrbo, but also the direct booking, for those very reasons.
We have a question from Maura. She says, would like to know more about security deposits and how far in advance payment for security deposits and rent fees are set up. Who would like to answer that question? Who takes security deposits? Do any of you take security? Kim, all right, why don't you?
So yeah, this is a great question, because there are a lot of different answers here. Because I am a co-host and I host for owners, and I am currently getting 2 properties up and running really quickly, the quick answer is to get a security deposit, although I will not say it's the best answer. And that's why I wanted to lead off, so that we could come in with a potentially better idea. But I do take a security deposit, and I ask for it right now 2 days before booking, which is separate from the payment that they do for the booking that happens otherwise. I don't love this setup, because I don't love that they're paying yet again right before they stay. It can kind of degrade that startup experience, but I'm being honest, that's what I do currently. And then I'm going to iterate that to be a better experience. So I can't wait to hear what Anthony says, because he's already at that level. I'm sure of it.
So we used to do security deposits, and, you know, I still think there's a level of when you have them, it does make people think, you know, twice about the way they care about the way they treat your home. And it depends on the money, right? Like, you know, oh, hey, you have $1,000 booking and you have $150 security deposit. What's that going to cover? not too much, right? I mean, you're talking about a house that's at least worth 100,000, 200, 300, 500, who knows, right? Like $150, it's not really going to cover much if they damage something. But, oh yeah, great, keep my $150. Who cares? You know, like your couch is destroyed. And the variation that we had before was I'd say the minimum we had was 750. The maximum we had was 3,000. And the way we used to collect it was cumbersome and arduous for the guests and for us, honestly. So we don't take checks anymore. When we used to take checks, we could have someone send one check for the actual rental, one check for the deposit, and then just rip it up. As we scaled, it didn't really make sense to do that. I mean, I'd have a little envelope with the check and be like, oh, let's see here. I mean, like, I can't deal with that anymore. And also people are kind of like, I'm sending you a $3,000 check, like, or they're putting $3,000 on their card, and that's holding up their credit. So it didn't. A lot of people got nervous about it, and none of these guests that were nervous about it were because they were like going to come in and intend to damage the place. And most people don't intend. If you probably already filtered out people that would intend to damage your home, right? So if you've done that and you're telling people, look, we want to cover ourselves if something were to happen, because no one ever thinks something's going to happen, but sometimes it does. We looked, so at the end of last year and starting this year, we decided to move into a damage waiver claim. And we're using a company, there's kind of 2 or 3 out there that are pretty popular. We're using a company, I'll drop a link in here, called Safely. And what Safely does is you go to them, you say, like, I have this many properties, you could have 1, you could have 5, whatever, 6, and then you tell them, you have to kind of set criteria if they're, if they're different. So like we have 1 bedroom, we have 3 bedrooms, we have 5 bedrooms, and we have 1 4-bedroom too. So we have a range. And so we basically set a level of coverage that we want to offer to guests for for damages. And what's really great, really, really great about this is the way it's set up is if the guest damages something, they could tell you about it, they could not tell you about it. In the situation where they tell you about it, those are the best guests, right? Oh gosh, your son stood up on the chair leg and it snapped. That happens. We'll take care of it. Before it was like, oh, I gotta tell you how much it is. In this case, your answer is, thanks so much for letting me know, but you know what? You're completely covered with a damage waiver. And again, the intention is you support it. They paid for it themselves, either separately or in the cleaning or blended in. It doesn't really matter to Safely. We have different models ourselves across the property. And the range that we pay to Safely, just for everyone to know, the range starts to like, I don't know, $18 to $23 for coverage from like $1,500 up to $10,000. And it also covers the guest if they hurt themselves, like they can get covered by insurance too, which is a different situation. But for damaging specifically for your property, you want something that can be taken care of so you're not out of pocket. And also because you're not having to have this awkward conversation with the guest. So the example I gave you before of someone telling you that they damaged it, that's a comfortable conversation. And it's super cool when you say, no sweat, don't even have to worry about anything. When you have a guest that doesn't tell you and your cleaner comes in, they go, there's this huge rip in your leather sofa. And you're like, oh my God, like the guest seemed so nice. They were so happy with everything. Like, what do you do? Then like, what would you do today? Like an Airbnb or Vrbo, you'd be like, oh, hey, so by the way, here's a picture, like what happened? And then it's like, oh, that was like that. And you're like, there's no way that was like that. So then you get in this contentious back and forth. If you can eliminate that, and you can with Safely, it's huge because you don't need to have any contact with them at all. They don't hear from you. You take that and you submit that claim, and the claims process with Safely is particularly easy. I could tell you that, but we don't know if we need to go into that, but it's particularly easy. And again, zero involvement with the guest. They don't have to say that they did anything. They don't have to say they didn't do anything. It's just between you and Safely at that point. Safely covers it. They send you a direct deposit back into your account within days. It's pretty amazing. And because the guest doesn't feel like they're paying any extra, or if they are, it's nominal. Like on some properties, we charge them like $29. It costs us $20. We charge them $29. So it's a little bit of a cost center effectively, but revenue center rather. But it seems to be working out. I mean, we're 5 months in on it, and I'm pleased with it. so far. At the end of the year, I'll be able to run numbers and say, we spent $1,000 on Safely insurance. We received, let's say $1,200 in revenue from Safely damage waivers that we charged to guests. And we also received $2,000 back in damage. So like we came out ahead. But even if I broke even, like all the little things that you might forget. So the couch was an extreme example, but like what happens when you have stain sheets? Oh, well, you know what? Okay, get rid of them. We'll get new ones. Cost of doing business. You guys ever hear that? It shouldn't be the cost of doing business. If you have a stain sheet and it's ruined, again, not just wear and tear, but like it's ruined. What the Safely process is, you take, there's 2 pictures of it. I'm not supposed to go into this in detail, but you take 2 pictures of it, and that's part of what you submit, and they pay you for it. I mean, it's literally that simple. And what would I have done before? I wouldn't have chased the guest. Oh, there was like some coffee stains on the sheet or something. You just suck it up. Now I don't have to do that anymore.
Joel, go ahead.
Anthony, what is the intersection between your major property insurance for the cost of billing and Safely? How do they collaborate, work together?
Repeat the question. Reformulate the question for me.
Does your overall facility insurance cost get reduced because you have Safely covering the minor stuff?
Got it. No.
Okay.
I will tell you this. There's another company that is not Safely, and it's called Wavo, and Proper Insurance owns them. All of our homes are insured with Proper. It's the Cadillac plan, if you will, of short-term rental insurance, and it's the Cadillac price. It's actually more like the Maybach pricing. Honestly, it's super expensive. So for those issues that are truly insurance, like big challenge problems, like the house burned down, God forbid, those are insurance claims. This is damage by guests, which is significantly different. The thing with we considered Wavo. I like them. I think the product is quite similar to Safely's, some variations. I had a little bit of a second guess in my mind. I was like, if I had a lot of claims with Wavo and they're owned by Proper, there's got to be some kind of sharing going on back there. Then I could just see my premiums continuing to go up, and I don't know. It didn't. I'd say it didn't sit totally right with me. And I actually like Safely's platform a little better. But that's just me. I'm a geek. You're welcome.
So I'd like to ask about cancellations. How do you handle cancellations with a direct booking? David, I think you've had a couple of cancellations, haven't you?
Not of the direct,
Not
no.
of the direct. Okay. All right.
Yeah, so I haven't had to deal with that.
Okay.
Not yet.
I would deal with them the same, but I'm with David. I haven't had a direct booking cancellation, but I would imagine that it would go very similarly to if they were on a booking platform.
So we, for our side, I'm trying to think if we've had any direct booking cancellations. I don't think we have actually either, but we have a policy that's kind of by property, and at this time, I think they match to what they are on the OTAs. Strategically, you could make them different and possibly more flexible for a direct guest. Maybe another advantage, right? But just be upfront about your policies with cancellations, and
yeah, and you've got all that in your contract too, so you probably have it pretty prescribed. Okay.
Yes.
I would say it would be more difficult for a guest to cancel a direct booking with a contract than it would through Airbnb, just like it's fairly easy for a consumer to return an Amazon product because you don't have to walk into the store and be like, I know I use this, but I don't want to anymore. The way, like, I think, you know how it is. If you buy something off Amazon and you return it the next day, you don't really talk with anyone that has any association with it. And that's kind of like canceling on an Airbnb or a Vrbo stay. Whereas if they have to call me and say, I need to cancel, it gives me an opportunity to talk to them about why they're canceling, what can we do, how can we work with them, and foster that relationship. And whereas Airbnb might just cancel them against your policy and against your wishes and not help you save that booking. So that's my thoughts there.
That's a great point too.
Good points.
Sounds like
So-
you're saying that direct guests, it can actually be really better for the host.
I might be.
So the other question that I get from hosts when we talk about direct booking is about vetting the guests. You know, they feel like Airbnb might take care of them because these guests are already, they've already been verified. So if you're pulling in a direct booking without that, you don't have that verification. So how do you do that for yourselves?
So my guests have all been previous Airbnb guests. So I consider that they're all pre-vetted by Airbnb and by me because they stay in my place. So that's all I'm going to say. I mean, I think Anthony and Kim have more relevant answers.
My direct bookings are focused on return guests that have stayed with me through one of the OTAs. And then once they get into the property, they have the option to direct book with me. And there's a variety of ways I do that that are in compliance with the Airbnb, like terms of service. But we get their email and we can do email marketing. And so many of the direct booking guests have been previous 5-star guests for me.
So
I have
I'll
a
wrap.
question.
Sure. Do you want to ask a question? I'll comment on how we do more vetting beyond what I mentioned before with the kind of initial questions that we bring to our guests prior to their booking.
Can you elaborate on the compliance with Airbnb to convert a guest from Airbnb to direct booking?
So I use this device called StayFi that will, when they want to get on the internet, it will capture their email and they can use the internet for free, but it helps me to get start that email process. And then so I don't go onto Airbnb and say, hey, instead of paying all these fees, would you like to just give me your phone number? We all know that that is not okay. And it will get you booted pretty quickly when they know.
But you have their phone number already.
I do. So you can text them, you can get their email and get them onto your email list. You can put in your guest book at your home how to book directly using branding like Anthony talked about earlier, and just constantly saying the name of your home helps them to then Google the name of your home. And if you have Google set up, they can find you that way. And so yeah, some of it's more obvious and
Okay.
some of it's less, but none of it is on the platforms.
Right. I understood that. Just because we had their phone number. So I thought if we texted them, was that compliant? Yeah.
Sarah, I ask my guests as soon as the booking is complete, I ask them to send me their email address. And I tell them that they're going to get their arrival information directly from my email account. And I've never had any pushback from Airbnb. You just have to wait until the booking is done. Does that answer your question?
Sorry, I muted you. Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, good. All right, Anthony, and I'm sorry, it looks like Joel has a question.
I'll wait till Anthony is done. My question's a different topic.
All right, good.
So from a vetting perspective, for direct guests. So as I mentioned before, we have a list of kind of questions that we ask out up front. We, going back to Safely, for one of our properties, this is also something that Safely offers. They offer a background check. And so remember, I've collected their name, their license, which has their address, their email address. I can enter that. I tell them they're doing this. It's part of our rental agreement, of course. So they're aware. We put it into Safely, and it will check them against, you know, criminal record checks, a handful. There's like 5 different processes that it kind of checks. And if anything doesn't kind of pass, it'll kind of tell you, you know, it'll tell you about it. And if it doesn't recommend you host the guest, it will tell you that as well. We only use that for our most expensive property. We don't use it for our anything. So we, out of our 6, we only use it for 1. And if you use it, you can't selectively do it for guests. That would be not allowed. Is the word I'm thinking of. The words I'm thinking of.
Profiling.
But yeah, that's probably it. So yeah, so when we do it for every single guest that stays in our house at this one home, but we don't do it for the others. We could, but we just would have to do it for everyone kind of going forward. There are ways of automating it a bit. Safely does allow that too, based on what software you may use. But we get, you know, we try to get a pretty good, comfortable feeling from conversations, messaging first, and then we started sending, sending like this has been recommended by one of the people that we know and love, Bill Faith, but we start sending messages for certain levels of bookings to kind of, thank them for booking and welcoming them. And then we'll also try to follow up with like a actual phone call. And again, this also, in a direct booking perspective, this is super helpful because you're also validating yourself even further, right? Like they're getting a call from you, they're speaking to you, they can ask you questions, and it's not, they kind of realize at that point it's not a scam, which again, some people may be concerned about because they're taking that risk again. So by offering that, verbal conversation, you can make them feel more at ease with their direct booking.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Joel, do you want to? Wait, actually, wait a minute, Joel. Maura, did you go away? Would you, Maura, I don't understand your question. Could you just ask it in your own words? And then we'll get to you, Joel.
Thanks, Debbie. I'm trying to understand the sort of payment schedule. So if I was booking a house tonight, I booked your house, Anthony, for a week in August. When would you take the first payment from me? And then when would you take, so just, I'm trying to understand how that correlates maybe with also the cancellation policy.
Yeah, it's a great point. So we set up individual policies based on the homes. So depending on which property you picked, we may take payment in full right now, which is preferable for us because, money in the bank effectively, right? And if it's already been sent to us, like it becomes more real. I will say this, and I've said this before, the guest that you have booked is not your guest until they pass the cancellation point. So let's just say I had a cancellation, a really flexible one, which I don't recommend, but a really flexible one where you could cancel for a full refund 1 week in advance.
Visit aapc.com. Learn more about.
And if you had that and you booked for, in your example, August 1st, that means by July 24th, you could cancel and still get 100% back, right? So if you book today, and even if I charge you today, and I'm like, oh yeah, I got this booking, and I'm all excited about it, and then July 24th comes along, and you cancel, and why maybe you canceled because for whatever reason, but we as hosts need to be very cognizant that this person is still only a potential guest. They've booked with you, they may have signed your contract, but if they're in their window of canceling and getting 100% back, there's no risk to them. All the risk is on you. So you better make sure you're continuing to market to them. Now, that doesn't mean you need to market to them like, come stay at our property. They've already said, oh, I'm going to stay at your property, but you want to make sure that you're sending them value messages about, like the examples that we would use. And we set this up kind of in a drip campaign type sequence. And again, if it's direct, it would come over email, through our platform, but come over email. Could come through text. That's another smart way to do things too. But we would send things like, are you getting ready for your vacation? It's only 45 days away or whatever, and then little tips like, oh, when you're here, this festival is going on and, it's going to be amazing. And just keep making them feel very comfortable about, and again, I'm not assuming they're going to feel uncomfortable, but like you want them to be excited to be coming to your property so that if they were just holding it and they were kind of like, oh, maybe we'll do this vacation. We have it booked, but we can cancel it a week in advance, which I'm sure all of us have done with hotels probably at some point. You're locking them in every time you're messaging them and adding something to get them excited about your property. We send like 2 weeks in advance, like, hey, if you guys are getting ready for your getaway and you're thinking about like, what are you going to be cooking? Well, let me tell you what we already have in the kitchen. So you don't need to bring your own pots. You don't need to bring your own, knives or whatever. We have this and that, and that just helps them feel comfortable and kind of get super prepared and much less likely to cancel. So all of us mentioned that our guests that we've had direct haven't canceled. And that doesn't mean that we won't ever have that, but I would say by doing what I just mentioned throughout the process up and even after the cancellation period, it's just good hosting, hospitality. Like you can continue to communicate with your guests and make them feel super comfortable. So many people, and they do this on the platforms and they do this, in direct. You book something, and let's just say you book it 6 months in advance. If you're the guest, you might not hear from that host until like the week before. If that's horrible. That's just bad. Like how many times have you booked something and been like, even on Airbnb, and you're like, wait a second, I'm pretty sure I booked it. Oh my gosh, let me double check. And you go into the app and you're like, oh, okay, I did. But you haven't heard from them at all. Like there's nothing going on. That's just bad hospitality. So that's just a tip that I think you should follow.
Did that answer your question, Maura?
Yes, it's great. Thank you.
Great.
Cool. You're welcome.
Great, Joel.
For all three of our hosts, respondents here, I've given up the idea of having a single piece of financial software that also acts as a CRM, customer relationship management. They don't seem to have anything within my price range that's really comfortable. So I'll buy a piece of software, manage finances on our own because we are direct booking right now. Do any of you have a CRM that is truly a relational database, not simply a spreadsheet, which just sucks? Do any of you have a CRM that you've discovered and use and are wildly enthusiastic about? Okay, not all at once.
Not yet. I'll say not yet that I can recommend. And I say that because we just recently signed up for a very comprehensive, newly launched platform called Market My STR, and it purports to have these types of capabilities. Not the finance side. Again, that's a melding that I don't, is somewhat unicornish, I would imagine. But I do believe it will have the CRM capabilities that we're looking for. Tell me about what capabilities you're looking for, Joel.
I grew up with databases. I want to know not just the contact information and the names. I'd like to have roughly the ages, the relationship. Is it my son, my aunt? What city are people coming from? So that when I have noticed that somebody is coming in from Georgia, I can say, we just had somebody from Georgia 4 months ago and they had a great experience. Or say, these next 2 weeks, everybody's out of school. We know you have a 14-year-old and you're crazy, you want to come. The name Market My STR sounds to me like it is a moderately expensive database targeting those people who have 4, 5, or more STRs, and I don't.
The starting price on that is $97 a month. So it's
Whoa.
not nothing, but it's not 1,000.
It is very comprehensive. Even for one property, I've learned about it and I don't use it. I haven't signed on for it. I can't do any more changes to my stuff right now. My brain can only handle so much tech. But it seems extremely comprehensive, more comprehensive than anything I have seen out there.
And I
But
need to push
Anthony's
back on that a bit, Kim, because comprehensive is one thing, usable is another, because if we were operating on our own, there's 15 different cells to fill in for everything. And unless it automatically transfers data, comprehensive can also be a pain. So what are you currently using?
I am currently using OwnerRez and Hospitable and Beyond Pricing. So I'm using 3 different things, but they do all talk to each other.
Thank you.
But I will say also, like, I have Stripe and I have a calendar software, and I use like a lot of different tech things that Market My STR is. I'm not advertising for them. So, but I'm just sharing what I know. But I could be able to eliminate a lot of these things that I use and just have this all-in-one, like Fred Meyer used to say, one-stop shopping. This Market My STR feels like one-stop shopping for all of the things that you would need. But I just don't want to change all of my things right now.
Okay.
So
Belladonna has a question about Safely, Anthony.
Sure.
She wants to know if Safely calls the guests to verify the damage.
Great question. Nope. Guest is not involved at all. 0. And that's amazing because it doesn't matter. I mean, literally, and I'll say this, and I don't think this is happening, but like if our cleaner came in and, you know, was walking in and it was early morning and had a cup of, you know, a mug of coffee and then tripped on something and spilled it all over the couch and was like, oh my God. And then they were like, hey, this happened. And again, I'm going to emphasize this. This is important. I trust our cleaners. I don't think that this would happen, but even if it did, what we've told our cleaners that we've implemented this damage waiver policy, and we've told them that, you know, we want them to make sure they're going through things with a, you know, relative fine-tooth comb. And we've also told them that, you know, as they report things that are damaged, if we need to replace them, we want to compensate them for assistance in that replacement. So I'll give the example that I gave the other day. We had a guest stay in our large cabin in Gatlinburg, and I have no idea how they got. It was on a wall, but it was an Etsy like stylized like deer head, not like a real taxidermy thing, but just like, you know, really nice looking. And it was like $300, and it had like, you know, antlers and things. And somehow it got knocked down. I mean, it's like high up. Who knows what the hell happened, but it got knocked down. The guest didn't tell us anything about it. Our cleaners found it in the closet with broken antlers, and it was like. And so again, we've told them we have this policy in place. Make sure you let us know about the damage. We need 2 pictures, one that's close and one that's pulled back. And then, you know, obviously just we make up a description of it. So we got that, and we told them we're going to send them a new one. We're going to buy another one. We're going to send it to them, and we need them to assemble it. So like put the 2 antlers in and then rehang it on the wall. Not too complicated, right? But guess what? It's asking our cleaners to do something other than clean. Should they be compensated? I would say that would make sense. Doesn't mean they're going to get $100 or $50. I asked her to just charge us for it. She charged us $10, and I said, you got to charge us at least $10. And I submit that, and Safely paid for it. So that's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
That is really great because sometimes on Airbnb, if you submit a claim and you have fixed it yourself, they don't credit you the time and the effort that you put into fixing your own stuff.
Yeah.
And so did your cleaner need to send you an invoice for that $10 hanging? Is that how that worked?
Yeah, I had her. I had her add it to the regular invoice. You could make one for them too. I mean, it doesn't. I mean, I have you know, some like our handyman who needs to go in and assemble a stool that got broken, and I said, look, I'm just going to create this invoice, and is that cool? And he's like, yeah, sure. So, but you know, most people have invoicing, but it's you know invoices they can send you, and again, it doesn't have to be super formal. It could literally be a piece of paper of like, you know, put together your stool, $25. And like you said, Airbnb, they would have been like, no, we're not paying for that.
Mm-mm.
Or if you did it yourself, I mean, in fairness, you are the property manager. I would submit a bill to the owner or you know, whatever, and then you get paid, which you should.
Right.
I just want to say it's almost 6:20. We've got about 10 more minutes left. Heather and CL and Nancy and others on the phone, any of you, if there's anything you want to ask that you've been thinking about, now is a good time before we wrap up here. Heather, I was looking at your face earlier and I thought you wanted to say something, so.
Yeah, this is a little bit back closer to the subject of just doing direct booking altogether. Before the pandemic, you guys did a really nice panel on doing direct booking, and I just wanted to say that was very inspirational to me. So we do sit on, I think I have 14 units right now, including a cabin in Washington State. I don't know how that happens. Everything else is in Hawaii, but but we are sitting, I think, at about 25% direct booking, and it's kind of snowballing. So it is kind of a slow growth thing, but I'm really happy with it. Aloha Growers, who you see on there, that's my SEO person, and she is kind of amazing. I do highly, highly recommend, if you have more than a few units and you're not a tech person, find someone who is, who can help you out, because they can kind of pinpoint and focus you where you need to go. I've gotten some great information today. Thank you, Anthony, for the safely information and the damage waiver claim information. That's amazing. But I did kind of want to add to, and I'm sorry if I'm monopolizing, I don't mean to, but I did kind of want to add to, you know, Mara was asking some questions about pricing and cancellations and things of that nature. And one of the really wonderful things about doing direct booking is you have an enormous amount of autonomy and control that you don't have with Airbnb and VRBO. And, you know, for example, I just had a guest who we just could not help each other out, and he left early. It was a direct booking. It made it really easy for me to return to him what I felt was fair, and which is the nights he didn't stay. It made it easy for me to take care of subsequent damages that were left when he went. They weren't major, but you know, it really drove home to me, and this just happened a couple days ago, how important it is to have that autonomy. If you're a professional and you are running this as a business, I really don't need Big Brother holding my hand to do it. I know what I need to do for my guest, and that's what I do. So I will just say this: if you can find that place where you're comfortable advertising. For us, we found for us on Maui and in Hawaii that advertising on Facebook has been lovely, and it is a slow start, but when it takes off really well. You keep track of who your guests were going forward. It's awesome. And thank you guys for being the inspiration that you were to get us going.
That's great to hear.
Mhm.
Love hearing that. And 25%, that's a great number. Not all of us can be as cool as Joel and have 100% right now, but we can aspire to be. But it is, I tongue in cheek a little bit, but like I think having that balance spread across is just diversification for everyone. Because of those situations that I mentioned, that something could happen to your Airbnb account or your Vrbo account, and the control port is really huge. I know we mentioned SafeEye earlier, and it's something that I heard about, like, I don't know, whenever like a year and a half ago when it kind of got launched, and was super excited about what it brought for, and just the way Kim explained it too. I'll just share a little bit more. Like, it's kind of like when you go to Starbucks, right? Like, you go to Starbucks and you're like, hey, welcome to Starbucks. Just enter your email address and click connect and you're on. It's pretty much exactly the same. It throws up a splash page when you connect to the network that's kind of open. But what's so huge is, people are like, oh, like Debbie collects the email address of a previous guest, and that's awesome. But what happens if Debbie had 10 guests stay at her house? Like, within that, the booking guest, and then you have 9 other people. You don't get that information. But the person who booked today, this year, if you will, isn't necessarily the same booker for the same trip that they want to do the following year. It could be the other family or whatnot, or the other person that wants to do it. But you have no connection to them, even though they stayed in your house. They loved what you had. Oh, I loved your seats, or I loved your, the beds that you offered, and I love the way you did this. You have no clue that they have any interest in you as a host or the way you host in general. But what SafeEye is doing is it's allowing you to potentially open up that door of relationship with every single person who stayed in your house. Now, it's all compliant. Like, you send them, they have to say yes, they're willing to accept like messaging from you, whether it be text or email. And so that's, you're kind of on the up and up in that perspective. And you're building your what Joel talked about with CRM, like, you're building a database of all these names of people who have already tasted your product per se, right? I just dropped my link in there for SafeEye. But what's so cool about, for us, it's like, and with marketing my SDR, as I mentioned before, like, you can't market to people if you don't have information to market them. Like, you don't, like, you may, if you had 100 people stay in your house over a year, that'd be a lot of bookings, I guess. That's 100 emails. But if your house sleeps 12, you could have literally 1,200. That's powerful, like, to be able to bring your message, to them. And again, they can opt out easily, all that other stuff, same marketing stuff, but like, it's really neat. I signed up for it. We implemented in every single one of our houses. People seem to like it. It's been helpful for like driving people for direct bookings, for extra reviews. And so much so, they're a super small company. I mean, when I first started with them, I think they were like 2 employees or 3 employees, and they're up to like 10 or something now, I think. But they sent out a thing actually saying like, hey, if you really believe in us and you want to invest in us, like, here's the way to do it. And like, I did, because I thought it was so neat.
May I interrupt here for just a sec? We're getting down to the wire, and I wanted to say Maura has another question about rental agreements, and I'm wondering if we've got something like really quick and dirty that we can direct her to as far as creating her own rental agreement. I think we need to have another meetup on rental agreements. It's a very robust topic, but there might be something that we can tell you right now that can stay within our time frame.
I sent a link to Sign Now as a reply to Maura there. That's the platform that we use to create our rental agreements. You can get a rental agreement from a lawyer. You can get it from, I think David put rental form center as a site. You could use Rocket Lawyer or legal documents, or there's a ton of them online. And then also you could talk to your local lawyer if you wanted, to get something more state specific, which might be recommended. And then implement it in like a DocuSign format. Sign now is just a DocuSign type. So it's straightforward. We just found them to be kind of the most flexible and best price for us.
And CL, I see you've got your camera on, and I just wanted to check in with you and see if there's any question that we can answer for you before we say goodbye.
Just a real quick question. How long did you all do non-direct bookings before you went out kind of on your own?
I started with direct 15 years ago. So
There was no Airbnb at that time, right?
there was no Airbnb.
Yeah.
I've been Airbnb for 6 years before I started doing any direct booking.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did like David with the shared space, and if they wanted to extend, I would take cash to extend, but didn't formally do it until I would say a year or two ago.
I'm trying to think of when we first started doing it. I would say we started off, actually, when we first started short-term renting our vacation home, we used a property manager, the real estate company that helped us buy the home. I would say probably about a year after we started, and then we took it over ourselves, and we were like, oh, we can list this on Airbnb and on Vrbo, and then it was kind of like, what else can we do?
Do you have a follow-up question for that, CL? Okay. Gary, is there anything you'd like to say? Mr. Beckler? There you
I'm
are.
sorry. I'm sorry. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, I was driving.
Sorry.
So regarding rental agreements, or when did I start in the business? When did I start direct bookings?
I just wanted to know if you have any questions for our panelists before we end.
No, I don't have any questions. I thought everything was excellent. I don't have any questions.
Okay, super. Okay, and here's our wrap-up poll from Charity.
I have
That's
this
a great
one.
question.
Yeah.
Uh,
Hopefully this conversation helped
Sure.
solidify some of that for you. So I'm really happy to see the results rolling in, and it sounds like everybody who's responded is very interested. So great job, panelists. And our last poll is one that we are asking sort of at a lot of our events, and that is regarding whether or not you would have enjoyed it to be in person, where we can see each other face to face. So I'm going to launch that one real quick. And there's 3 questions there. All of them, well, I was going to say all of them yes or no, but the last one is about your timing preference. So jump on there if you have a chance, and this information helps us for planning future events. So I appreciate you taking the time to do that. And I just wanted to say, I know I'm not supposed to be wrapping it up, so I won't, but I did want to say thank you to everybody. That was really, really useful. I got at least 10 different links to awesome tools that you can use. I got like some good insights into how to approach this direct booking whole process. It feels like a really interesting funnel that should help folks engage more closely. So I appreciate all of the information I learned, and I hope you guys did too.
That's
Debbie?
great. Well, so that was a great wrap up, Charity. I thought it was perfect. And I just want to thank our panelists and all of you guys for being members of Host to Host and participating in things like this with us. It's just really, really encouraging and lovely to hear things like what Heather said about, past meetups. It gives us purpose and makes me feel really good. So anyway, next month we will be talking about amenities, and let's see, Charity, where is your Oh, how did I do that again? All right, amenities that matter. That's the title of our next one. And we're going to be talking about things that we have in our listings or that we want to have in our listings that take us beyond our superhost status. And so I think it's going to be a really, really great meetup. So that Charity will be announcing that sometime very soon. Okay, thank you all for coming.